Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. Want to bring you guys a quick market update. This is a live stream, but it's going to be a short live stream, probably my shortest live stream ever on record. Maybe, maybe not, but I am going to try to keep it to around 30 minutes. I was hoping to do just a regular video update today, battling a little bit of a cold. I'm getting better. I've turned the corner here. I was down for the count for a couple of days there, but I'm feeling much better, but I still am not 100%. So I'm going to try to make this one a little bit quick. Just wanted to give us some updates going into the weekend. There's been some wild action the last couple of days with some of these alts, just some amazing wicks all over the place, made for some tough trading for the most part, but Bitcoin is really what I want to focus on here right away, and then we'll get into some of these other names. So the goal here is going to be to max 30 minutes and shorter if I can. That's going to be tough for me, shorter if I can. But let's do a quick update on BTC. So just to recap, I had posted a chart on TradingView, and I generally don't post a whole lot of charts on there. But I was talking about this lower trend line to be watching that obviously was breached, but hasn't seen a quick sell-off. And you can see here that over the last couple of days, it's just been this choppy sideways action. And for the last 3-4 days, this really nothing. I mean, it's up, down, up, down, up, down, but it's just choppy sideways action. That's not an ideal trading environment if you're looking to do some quick tradings, because as traders, we want momentum and we want direction and trend, whether it's up or down. You can't go long, you can't go short on this. It's unless you're playing the very short time frames, right? The 5 minutes, the 15 minutes, you can do that. But right now it's just a little bit choppy. But this is not necessarily bad, because there's a couple of things that I'm watching here. If we zoom out a little bit and go to this daily chart, a couple of key levels to be watching in near term. There is obviously the double bottom support that we saw right around that $5,800 mark. Let me hide the volume just for now, and I'll pull it back up here. And so we had that, and we rallied, and now we're seeing the 10 EMA climb, and we've seen these daily lows here hold above that here for the last 3 days. And you can see here for the last 5 days, after that last big pop, it's just kind of been sideways. Haven't really done a whole lot, but this has been positive in terms of consolidating some of that initial leg off the lows and setting up for a potential breakout. This $6,800 zone has been that intermediate resistance here to be watching near term. Above that, $7,100 is the next resistance zone to be watching. And so I'm keeping an eye on here to see if we break out of this little zone that we've been in for the last couple of days and see a quick leg up that could take us to 7,100. The alternative scenario that a lot of people are starting to point out now, and I've been watching out for myself, is this inverse head and shoulder that's potentially forming on the bigger daily picture, right? So you got that left shoulder there. This is your head. And if we make another dip lower, you could be looking at a right shoulder. Right now, this is not a right shoulder. Some people are saying that's the right shoulder. It's really not. You need a low, you need a higher low than the head to be qualified as an inverse head and shoulder. The result is ultimately going to be the same. You're going to have a neckline established if we do that, and the breakout point is going to be basically the breakout point now if we go higher. And so it's just a matter of, do we have this dip first, make a higher low, which would also be very healthy on the daily chart. Don't want to see it get much below 6,200 if we do make that dip, but anywhere between here and there would still be positive, and we need to see volume come in on the right side if it moves higher. Ultimately, the breakout above this neckline would be confirmation of that. And if we saw that happen, you could do a measured move on this type of scenario. It would take it well above the $7,100 mark if we saw it play out to that way. So that's one scenario to play out here to keep an eye on. But right now, going into the weekend, I'm looking at the potential that this may just be a little bit of a continuation pattern and then a breakout higher, which could see that $7,000, $7,100 mark hit. And then we'll see a pretty deep correction setting up that higher low on the daily chart. So those are the two things I'm looking out for. I do have some conditional buy orders placed while I'm going to be away from the screens over the Friday evening and some of the later part of tomorrow, but I'll be watching a little bit here over the weekend. There are some positions, some trades I've been making, some quick trades here today. Basic attention token, caught a quick pump on that earlier, so we'll go into that. So that's what I'm looking at on BTC, but you can see here on the hourly, it's just very choppy, very wide action across the board. Looking at all exchanges, it looks pretty similar, right? So that's really the thing to be keeping an eye out on Bitcoin. Another thing I want to point out here, and I know some of you guys have asked me about this. I apologize. I am way behind on getting this out to you guys. But I was looking at the bull momentum index here, and it was interesting to see that today it actually went higher than it was the last couple of days, even though the price has been sitting flat. And so that's one thing I'm looking out for there. But it's still in the bull zone, which is positive, even though this has been consolidating. MACD still confirming, RSI is still sitting tight. We never really quite broke above that 50 RSI mark with force. I mean, we went above it a little bit and below, but not quite getting above that. And I was talking about that 50 mark on the RSI just because that has not been a level that has been breached with any significance since the early part of May was the last time we were above that point. And you can see here we're testing it again. Getting above that is a good early indicator. A lot of traders will use that as kind of the minimum from an RSI perspective on a signal that says, okay, it's kind of entered into a little bit of a bull zone. I use 60 as my confirmation. If it gets above 60, that's much more positive, but certainly getting above that 50 would be better in the near term. So one thing to keep an eye on. One last thing on Bitcoin before we look at a few other charts. There was an interesting thing. I didn't catch this earlier, but I noticed it here today. Let me go to the 4 hour. It'll be easier to see here. And I will clear this just for clarity's sake. Let me go back to just the price. So we had this double bottom that was formed right around that $5,800 mark. And, technical targets are just a rule of thumb. You kind of use them as a guide, but ultimately price action is my guide when it comes to taking targets. But what you do is you take the depth of the double bottom up to the neckline, which was right around here, and then you project that out above the breakout point. So let me draw the breakout point here for you guys. That's the neckline on the double bottom. And when it breaks out, you project that higher. And you can see that this move, and depending on how conservative you are on that breakout, if you take it down to the candle bodies, you pull this one in a little bit here. But at the end of the day, this thing projected right out to that resistance point here, which is real interesting. That's the that same resistance point we've been watching right around that $6,800 mark. And you can see here a couple of days ago, we had that last final pump that took it almost exactly to that resistance point, which was also the double bottom projection. And now we've been seeing some consolidation here. So just something I'm keeping an eye on. This is potentially just a throwback pause after that double bottom breakouts, and we could get another leg higher. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for. Obviously, the bear scenario, the worst case scenario, because we're still technically in a bear market. The worst case scenario is, hey, this was just another bear flag rally. It's over. July rally was only 3 days long, and we're going to make new lows, and that's the end of the run, right? And there's some folks out there that are in that camp that are expecting that, and that's fair. I mean, everybody has their own assessments. You trade your plan, you trade your game, and may the best man win. And so that's one scenario that we still have to keep in the back of our mind, guys. I mean, it's very easy to get excited because we've been in just this long, protracted, painful grind lower for those of you that have been holding or wanting to trade through this on the long side. And now we're trying to see this reversal attempt. And so it's easy to get excited, but you still have to keep in mind, in no way has there been any confirmation in the long term that the worst is over. It could be, right? We won't know for a while, but could it be possible that this 5,800 double bottom on this weekly was the low? Sure. I mean, it could absolutely be that we'll look back one day and say, hey, that was it. Then we rallied higher and we continue to make higher lows from there. But for now, there's just no way to say. And if you're trading shorter term timeframes, it really doesn't matter because you're going to go based on much shorter timeframes than that. If you're making longer term investments, then absolutely that matters. So that's it for BTC here. Let me see. What would be the bottom of level of the right shoulder? 6,200 is the most I would want to see it go. So if we made a right shoulder and we dipped, I would not want to see it get much lower than around that 6,200, maybe a little bit lower, but that's going to really be pushing it if we get much deeper than that. You can also do a quick fib analysis on this last impulse leg higher. So if you do that, you can say, hey, what if we pulled back to the 618 level? That takes you to around 61.73. That would be doable, but I'd like to see that be like a quick spike down and then head higher from there. Much below that, you can pretty much write that pattern off. See what else here. GBTC real quick. I know that's a stock and it's a Bitcoin trust. It's a very inefficient way to trade Bitcoin, to be honest with you, just because it's very gappy. But when I have some capital just unallocated to stock trades, and Bitcoin has a setup, I'll tend to look at this one as a potential exposure. I did here near the lows when it was very washed out, and I caught the quick gap up over the weekend and sold into that. Here, I was watching this little ascending triangle form on this. So this is also another indicator that, hey, maybe we're setting up for a breakout on that guy. So I picked up a small position on that on the trading account on the stock side for now. So just something to keep an eye on. It's interesting to see this pattern sit much tighter than the actual BTC side. But until we get an ETF or something, that's kind of the only alternative if you're trading it from the stock account. But like I said, it's a very inefficient way to trade BTC. You're much better opening up a real trading account on BTC here. So, all right, let's keep going here. Going back to the crypto space, a couple other names I want to point out. Ethereum. So ETHUSD, real quick here, has not been as strong as of late, but it's setting up a similar pattern, sitting very tight here. You can see just how quiet and narrow this is getting. This is becoming symmetrical in a lot of ways. In the highs and the lows of the most recent days are getting tighter and tighter. And so definitely watching that here. Could break out either way, yes. But the momentum is on Bitcoin leaning towards the bulls right now, just because we've had that big pop off the lows. And so this is one to keep an eye on here. Going to the 4-hour chart here real quick. You can see that's sitting here pretty tight. So also one to watch. And if this breaks out higher, this will show some good confirmation for the alts that they're going to be outperforming maybe. Let me go to BTC here. You can see it's just versus BTC the last, what is this, couple of weeks. Just a very flat range, right? Just very tight versus Bitcoin. But you can see I've got this line marked on my charts already. If it starts to get above that and close above that, that's going to be significant in terms of starting to turn the corner versus Bitcoin. And I use Ethereum as a little bit of a bellwether for the overall altcoin market. And so if it starts to turn the corner here, that'll be very positive for the broader breadth of alts versus BTC. Right now, we're seeing some wild pumps. It's very much just random, not across the board. We had a couple of good days, over the weekend and early this week, but then everything has just kind of been consolidating for the last couple of days since the holiday here in the States. But basic attention was one that was pumping earlier. Let me go to the 1 hours, just really shows it here. I was watching this breakout here at these lows as it was starting to consolidate here at the lows, was on my radar, had that initial pump, posted that alert, and sure enough, I mean, if you go to the 5 minutes, it was like right after I posted it here, it was like 10 minutes later, it popped on massive volume, gave you that really quick run up, and then now it's just kind of consolidating that move. Loom was another one that had a really big move earlier. Pull that up here, you can see that. And that's pretty significant here. I mean, this was a 60% run right there very quickly. I mean, these are 5-minute bars. So you look at the hourlies here, you can see Loom ran up 60% in just about 4 hours. And so a lot of these names did this kind of pullback right to the breakout point. So you can see we had this consolidation off the lows and we had this rally, and then they pulled right back to that breakout point. And Loom was a perfect example of a nice move right off of that. I'm looking at a couple of the other names that were strong earlier in the week to do something similar potentially. Looking at EOS, for example. EOS had that breakout from the lows here right around that $8.30 mark and had that run up, a little bit of a double top formed. You can see the momentum was waning on that RSI and it's just started to pull back. And here it is right into that support breakout point. It is forming a little bit of a bear flag. So what I'm going to be looking for is if we make another dip, does the RSI start to diverge positive, especially on the shorter term time frames here, like on the 1 hour, and seeing if this support zone holds. and start looking for a move higher. So a lot of these names are doing something similar. Lumen was pretty strong earlier today, doing something real similar here, right to the breakout point, undercut it a little bit, trying to move off. And so that's the pattern that I'm watching right now. Those are retracement patterns. Those are just kind of pullbacks to these initial runs, right? These are not necessarily new breakouts, but they're just kind of throwbacks to that original breakout. NEO was one of the stronger names, if not the strongest name this week, other than some of the small caps that were just crazy pumping earlier today. But you can see this one also finally topped out. I mentioned this was losing some steam here when I posted that chart on BTC here a couple days ago. The RSI was starting to diverge here as this was rising higher. So something you got to pay attention to, at least start tightening up the stops, get ready to take profit if you're making quick trades on this guy. But now it's retracing, potentially giving a secondary entry for those that missed that initial first leg. If you do a quick fib analysis on this, let's do that impulse leg there. So we're right at the 382 level right now. Let me make it exact here. And so the 50% would take you down to about 35.41. And if it continues lower, 33.57 would be what I'd be watching. And that's also a key breakout point on here. Will it continue retracing that deep? It's anyone's guess, but those are the levels to be watching near term. The way I like to watch these, though, is look at the shorter time frames. When the retracement looks like it may be ending, I start looking at the 1 hours if I'm trying to make an entry and looking for some bullish divergence on some of these. So if, say, for example, this makes another low to, say, 36 or something, and the RSI doesn't, then I start really paying attention, right? Looking for that reversal. And then I'll take my trigger based on some price action reversal, confirmation to the upside, a big green candle on volume, something like that. Dent had a big move today. So for those of you that are just joining, yes, this was an impromptu live stream. Thanks for being here today, guys. I mentioned earlier I was just kind of coming off of a cold, not quite 100% yet. So I'm going to keep this live stream short today. I'm feeling much better, but I will be back to my normal routine and videos later. I just thought instead of making a video today, why not just do a quick update on the markets? So that's that. So thanks for being here. We'll take a look at a few more others. Yeah, Dent. I mean, this is a new listing on Binance too. So, you know, those tend to have that big run, and that was why. That was Dent 8. Sorry. There's Dent BTC. So that was a big run on that one there. Power was one I was watching set up here, and I mentioned Power the other day in my live stream. Didn't quite break out of that pattern I was watching, but it still held support. So something to keep an eye on here. This was the pennant pattern that I was keeping an eye on there. Obviously, it broke down, but it's right back to this breakout point like many other names. Now you want to see confirmation, right? It made that first attempt off that support level, and now we want to see if it can start to rally higher here. So it's still on my radar, something I'm going to be watching here in the near term. Some of the other ones here, let me look at my list here. Walton. Looking at Walton here. Going to the daily chart, this one was never one that quite broke out off of the lows. It's still sitting tight. Looking at the long-term picture, right, this is a good attempt at maybe trying to form a low. There's no confirmation yet, but after that big washout, you can see versus BTC here about a week and a half ago, very oversold. RSI was in the low 20s. And here the last week or so, it's just trying to build a little bit of a low. So one I'm keeping an eye on here. It's a good project, longer term. I'm liking it. And having that big correction is something you want to watch here. And so this is one I'm looking at for a potential breakout here. Let me see what some of the other ones on my list were, and then I'll go ahead and start taking a look at yours. Storm was one that I was watching earlier as well. One of the quick pump movers earlier today. A lot of momentum, but just has kind of consolidated right now. I was hoping to see another leg higher on this guy. Poly was showing some life earlier. Polymath, quick move higher. But look at these long wicks on some of these names, man. We've just been seeing a lot of these here today, or this week, I mean, just these real big wicks on so many of these names. Who else here? Chain Link. Sis was crazy a couple days ago. Sis was so crazy it shut down Binance. That was a precaution, though. I mean, they did the right thing there. They tend to have some pretty good back end systems in place to catch these irregularities, as they call them. No doubt there was something irregular there. But chain link, another one that I'm watching here, trying to form a low here in recent days. You can see here on the daily chart, if this was the low, this is a nice higher low, and this is the type of pattern that I want to see a lot of these other names start making, right? Not that pullbacks are fun, but they're very healthy in terms of the market structure, because you get this first run off the low, then you get a pullback. And if this ends up holding and we start making these higher lows or higher highs, this is just very positive across the board when you start seeing more and more names do this type of pattern, right? These pullbacks and then start forming a base, a higher low, and making a higher pattern. So Link is doing one of those. Definitely one I'm watching right now, looking to see if we can get some more upside momentum from this most recent low established here. I think that was it on my list. Let me see any other names you guys want to watch here, or actually let me go through some of the USD pairs, just because some of these are pulling back to some of the breakout points from earlier. We talked to Neo, we talked ETH. Let me do Litecoin real quick. LTC. I'll go to USD on Coinbase here for this guy. And so looking at Litecoin again, this potentially, right? Whoops, we got to wait for confirmation here, but looking for a potential higher low to be formed on this guy here. So you can see we've had this low established. We made a little high. Now we're pulling back. Let's see where this low lands. If it lands above 78 or so, and decides to start turning the corner, that's going to be very positive, right? So that's the type of action that I'm going to be paying attention to from a kind of a more macro trend type of thing, just to start looking for more of those type of patterns showing up across the board. Let me see. We did Neo, Lumens, Ripple. Let's take a look at Ripple. I'm going to do Ripple from the USD pair. Ripple Tether. And obviously that's pulling in from the most recent high around 52 cents. Had a most recent low right around 45 cents. So it's already seen a pretty decent pullback. Not quite as deep as the ultimate low right here around 42 cents. And so let's see if we can make a higher low here. That was a big daily support bar yesterday. We just rolled over a new candle, by the way. This daily bar has closed, and we're not quite an hour into the new day, which is technically Saturday at UTC time. And so that's what I'm going to be watching. But you can see here, this is another example where, and I had put these lines on the chart here yesterday. You can see over the last day or so, we've pulled right back to those support zones, and now we're moving higher. So if we make another low and make a higher low here, that's what I'm going to be watching. And that'll be good confirmation that that was probably a good higher low following this little double top that so many of these names put in. EOS is one of those. I mentioned EOS at the start of the stream here, but I'm going to just cover it again real quick. So you pulled right back to the breakout point here versus BTC. EOS dollar, very similar structure there. You can see pulled right, or almost pulled back, not quite there, but it is bouncing right into the moving average. So a little bit of a bull flag type of thing. Look at the volume on this. It's just drifting lower as this rallies higher. So definitely not something to chase, but I'm paying attention now as a potential, hey, does it hold this support zone? If it doesn't, it just crashes right through, then nothing to do. But you got to always kind of anticipate what the next move might be. Cardano. Oh, yeah, DigiPi was strong here. I'll take a look at that guy. And we are running close to time. I'll go about another 10 more minutes, and then we will wrap it up. It's going to be a quick stream, record-breaking live stream. All right, let's see. Cardano. Yeah, so I'll see another thing, right? It broke down, and right now this just feels like a little bounce, kind of bear flag bounce on the 4-hour, right into resistance. Look at that, almost to the penny to that 10 EMA on the downside. And now I'm looking for a potential leg lower. Now, the thing to look for on these potential legs lower, which most likely it will go lower, unless Bitcoin just decides to rally hard here out of nowhere, which happens in this market. The thing I'm going to be looking for here is on these names that have that dip, that second dip lower. If it makes a higher RSI as this thing breaks below the most recent low here, then look for that reversal. Look for those double bottoms with a bullish divergence. That could signify that that's probably the end of that move lower, and then we're going to start this higher low. On the daily chart, that's just going to be a good positive higher low if we see that. And if it closes above, that today's candle, then that's going to be the signal that, hey, that was probably it. So those are the type of things, right? It looks bearish when you zoom in. Yeah, that's a little bit of a bear flag. And the 4-hour chart, the big picture though, I'm looking at this as, hey, this could be a good higher low. This is what we were looking for. We've had a few days of pullback, and maybe we're setting up to go higher in a lot of these names. You see here, quant stamp, or let me do Digibyte first. I mentioned that one already. Digibyte. Man, and I did not trade this. I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't, because I called it. I was looking at this ascending triangle before it broke out. I said, hey, that's a good looking triangle. Didn't place any breakout orders, nothing, just watched it broke out. Didn't put any retracement orders. When it decided to pull back, just watched it. It just continued higher. Today we had a pretty good secondary entry set up right around here. So you could have made another trade here on this little bit of a volume spike as this thing broke higher and jumped in there as well. So, but it's still going, still looking good. Now I will caution on the hourlies. It is getting a little bit on the overbought side now, right? You can see RSI on the hourly is hitting 80. On the 4-hour, it's 72, not extreme, but I think these are dangerous to chase if you're looking to buy it now, right? If you're on it, then you ride it as long as it can go. See here, quant stamp. Quant stamp. Let me go out to the daily, because I just want to highlight the same pattern starting to show up on a lot of these names. It's not confirmed yet. Until we see the actual reversal higher, it's not confirmed, but this pattern starting to show up on a lot of names. At the high, we had that swing high a couple days ago. Now we're making a potential higher low. If we get that reversal with volume, especially the volume, look at the last 3 days have been well below average on the daily. If we get that higher above average volume on these type of setups, and you start seeing that across the board, that's going to be very positive in the intermediate term. I'm not saying the bear market's over, but that's going to be very positive in the intermediate term that, hey, we're going to see another leg higher. 0x. 0x has been strong too, man. 0x said, what pullback? You want me to pull back? There is no pullback. So 0x is looking pretty good here. I'm liking the way this is sitting tight. Maybe a potential breakout candidate right there. If it can move higher here, let me see. Is this at a key resistance level? Not really. Let me do a quick fib on this guy, see if it bounced right into a level. I mean, and 0x didn't quite pull back as much as these other names here, right? I mean, here was the March low, and a lot of these names pulled back all the way back to here. Some cases much further. And this one didn't, and so this one's been sitting here pretty tight. Let me do. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to do. Sorry guys, Medicine Head. So bounce right to the 50% there on the fib, which is not really a fib number, but it's a common retracement number. So, cool. 0x. Monero. Let me check out Monero really quick. Do a few more, guys, and I'm going to wrap it up. It's almost 6 p.m. my time. Had a crazy week, busy, but then got sick and back at it today. And so I'm going to try to get some rest here tonight. But Monero, looks double toppy to me. And so if it breaches this level here, I'll take a look at the USD pair. But right now, this looks like a little double top forming there on the BTC pair. Monero dollar. The dollar here on Bitfinex. Another example of one that's come right back to that initial breakout point. So from the dollar side, it's not too bad. BTC side, it's not looking quite as healthy there. But on the dollar side, right, you had that big volume spike, pull back right to this breakout point. So if it's going to hold, this is the level to be watching here. And I'd be waiting for it to confirm by getting back above like 137 or so. And if it does that, that'll probably show that that was a good low right there on the USD pair. Loom. All right, we'll take one more look at Loom. I know that was a big mover today. I looked at it just a little bit ago here. It's pulling in here. It had just this massive pump earlier. It was what, 60% in 4 hours or something wonderful like that. And this was interesting too, because I was on a live stream with my group earlier this morning, just as Loom was breaking out, somebody pointed it out and they said, look at Loom, it's breaking out. And it was like right here. And I said, oh, that's your signal. If you like it, it's probably, you know, it's breakout, it's gone. And then I never looked at it. It just kept going. So yeah, Loom had a nice run. It's pulling right back on the shorter time frames to this moving average. See if it can consolidate and set up there for maybe a secondary entry on the 4 hour. If it continues lower, you see the 10 EMA is right back to the prior resistance point here. Will it pull back that far? If this is going to go higher, probably not. But if it pulls back that far, probably not a good sign either. So let's see here. Smash the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here on this Friday, late Friday impromptu live stream, the cold and flu edition of The Node Investor. It's not really cold and flu. It was like a 48-hour bug. I'm a wuss when it comes to getting colds. All right. V-Chain. Let me go to Binance. And yeah, I'll take a look at ETC here. V-Chain, potential reversal pattern forming here versus Bitcoin off the lows here. This is the 1 hour, and certainly has had quite the pullback here recently. Someone was asking me about this earlier too, and they were asking, how low could it go? And I said, right now, it doesn't look like it wants to go higher here. It's just drifting lower. On this 1 hour here, it looks like maybe we'll get a bump, but ultimately on this daily, it's got to get back above this moving average. You can see it tried here 3 days ago, 4 days ago, spiked above, came right back in, still coming lower. And so RSI on the daily, unfortunately, has room to go lower still before it hits these oversold levels. And so the level to be watching on the downside is this low that was established late March, early April. And I already got that line marked on my chart. Someone was asking me about it earlier today. And if it's going to go higher, right, if that's going to be it, that would be a nice double bottom test. Ideally, you want to make it higher low and then go from there. If it breaks below that, this was such a quick run up that there's not going to be a lot of support below that. So I'd be cautious there. You could see a quick spike lower and then close higher, but that's going to be a critical zone to be watching in the near term. So that's another, 15% from current pricing. Yeah. V-Chain. So let me look at Ethereum Classic here because it did clear a little bit of resistance today. It was potentially forming a rising wedge right into this resistance, but it cleared right through it. The good news is the 4 hour wasn't anywhere near overbought conditions, and so it had room to run if it wanted to push higher, and it did. So it pushed higher here. I'll go to another exchange here that has a little bit more volume, but you can see just strong across the board in terms of some of the action we're seeing. Here's the chart I had marked up earlier, and it pushed above and just sitting tight right above that resistance point. So it's still looking good. There's no divergences that I'm spotting right now. The momentum's definitely still positive. Going to the 1 hour, it's not even overbought on the 1 hour right here. So could it go higher? It absolutely could here. And this has some kind of news momentum coming off of the Coinbase announcement that they were going to release the forked ETC coins, which, hey, I should get some of those because I had some ETH on Coinbase before that fork happened. So I'm going to get mine. But good action here on this daily. This last daily here was very strong, above average volume there as it broke through resistance. So that's a good breakout. Tron. Just smashing through those support levels like they're not even there. So let me go to Tron. We don't need to see the daily. Here we go. So Tron on the hourly here. This is the 4 hour chart of Tron, trying to form a little bit of a low here. I mean, it's just been drifting lower. Had this potential rally here, but just still drifting lower versus BTC here. I did take a shot at Tron 2 days ago on the Tether side, and this is what I was looking at here. I was trying to do a retracement entry, and I got stopped out. But I had this breakout, and it pulls right back. I thought, okay, this is a good potential secondary entry if it's going to come off this and go higher. But it didn't, clearly. It just broke lower along with the rest of the other names that were trying to do that. So Tron is not quite as strong here as some of these other names. Let's go Quantum real quick. Quantum's one that never had that big move higher. I'm going to do Quantum Tether because this is one I'm watching right now. And you can see here, right around that $9.40 or so, has been a key resistance level, right? It's tested it, tested it, tested it. It's testing it again today. Still rejecting off of that level, but it's tightening up here a little higher near that resistance point. So this is one I'm going to be watching here to see if it can consolidate over the weekend and potentially set up a breakout above that point there. All right, so we're going to do, let's see here. I'm going to do 3 more, and then I'm going to call it a day, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate everybody being here on this impromptu, last-minute Node Investor live stream. I'll do some more. I'll do another video update over the weekend, kind of a little bit more in depth, depending on what the market does, and hopefully, if Bitcoin breaks out, hopefully, we'll see. I'm scrolling through your comments, by the way. Just give me 1 sec here. Zill. Let's do Zill. Zillico. Yeah, Zill was one I was watching here. It's just finally had that pullback I was looking for. I was thinking, man, I missed the pullback. I thought this was it right here. So I definitely missed the pullback, and it had another leg higher. Now it's pulling in, making a lower high. Looks like it wants to pull in a little bit more. So definitely one to watch here. But I'm liking this one. It's certainly showing some strength off the lows. This daily chart, very strong. Maybe we're going to make that higher low. Maybe that was it already today. So still living above that 10 EMA on the daily. So still looking pretty good here coming off the lows. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on Zill here. Someone in my group was mentioning it earlier from an Ichi perspective, saying that it had bounced off the cloud. Let me go take a look at that. Let's go see what Zill looks like. Oh yeah, I already had it on. Zill Ichimoku. And so yeah, here's the 4-hour. You can see it pierced above the 4-hour. It pulled right back to the top of the cloud. Also hit the Kijun-sen line, which is generally an area of support if you're trading the Ichimoku system. And so as long as it holds this is actually pretty positive. And ideally, right, you buy into those support zones. You can see future Kumo twist is going bullish here. So projecting some positive signs there. You can see the TK lines above the Kijun-sen. So from this perspective, it's bullish. So it looks good. It's looking good, my friends. All right, so let's keep going here. A couple more here. Do. Let me see if I've got any here. Let me do this here real quick. Hold on. It's coming. Un momento, my friends. Nobody wants to look at this Zill chart while I do this. Let's pull up BTC here real quick. I have anything against Zill. I think Zill looks pretty good. But yeah, I mean, Bitcoin's just been this sideways, choppy. Not a whole lot to do yet. Opinion on buying master nodes at these levels, Zcoin specifically. You know, it's kind of funny because people say, hey, your name's Node Investor. Do you have a bunch of master nodes? And I don't. To me, and I don't have anything against master nodes, but to me, at these levels would be much more attractive to answer your question. But generally speaking, the price change risk far outweighs the ROI that you get on a masternode, right? The extra coin. Unless you're planning to hold that thing for like a year or longer, they generally are not worthwhile from that perspective. It's kind of like buying a dividend stock, right? Like that's why I don't buy dividend stocks, because I could care less about the dividend when I trade a stock. I'm trading it for the price change and the momentum, and I'm not going to hold a stock for a dividend if the stock drops 30% in price. Like, it just doesn't make any sense, because the dividend doesn't doesn't matter at that point, right? Because most dividends are single digits. So, and it's the same approach with the masternode, right? Like a high ROI masternode, maybe that's worth the risk, but on a typical masternode, if it's already priced in, you got to be willing to hold it for a long time, or you buy when the daily chart is just very washed out. RSI is at the lows, like it was here recently. Then yeah, if you like the masternode, then it makes sense to start scooping it up at that point because your risk is much lower. Don't buy a masternode when the RSI is like RSI is at 670 or 80, right? Because you got a lot of risk to the downside. So that's my thoughts. I don't have anything against them, and I think it's actually pretty cool, the idea of it. It's just from a trading and investing perspective. I'd rather just trade and have access to the coins and sell them quickly. Sell them as I need to. Let's see. Quantum was on the move alert. Really? Quantum BTC here? Let me see. Oh, that was that pump we saw earlier. A little wick. And that was this guy here. I got an alert that said Quantum was on the move. That's that guy. So cool. Let me see what else. What else flashed on my alerts here? Doc? What the heck is Doc? Let's go see Doc. Apparently Doc is on the move here on KuCoin. Small cap name, maybe. Doc. Coming off the lows with some good volume there. All right. And see, we did Digibyte. We did Neo. I'll do IOTA. That one had a pretty deep pullback here on IOTA. So looking at IOTA, it's already made that. I mean, this has to hold here for that to be the higher low. You can see IOTA on the oh, that's the 1 hour. Let me go to the daily here. This is what I was looking for. Here we go. At that low, and it pulled back here. It's right back to that breakout point, and you can see it's trying to make that higher low on the daily chart. So this is one to keep an eye on here near term. Definitely had a big retracement here, so see if it can hold here. Very similar pattern to what I was just pointing out on some of these other names, where it looks like a little bit of a bear flag right into that moving average. I'm looking for a higher low or a low with a bullish divergence RSI, and when it breaks higher, that's going to be my trigger on a lot of these names. No, Power Ledger is not out of play for me here. I mentioned that earlier. It didn't break out of that pattern I was watching, but it's still holding support. You can see it dipped below it here recently. Now it's trying to hold here. So it's on my watch list. I'm not doing anything with it yet, but it's not out of play yet because that big move it had earlier, paying attention to it. If it retraces much lower than this low it put in just yesterday, then probably come off my radar at that point. But if it holds higher here and decides to start turning the corner, I'll take a look at it. Let me see here. What exchange do you short with? Kraken offers shorts on BTC up to 5x leverage. You can short ETH on Kraken. And I believe that's the only names you can short on Kraken. You can buy Monero with leverage on Kraken. Only 2x, though. That's about it. You can short on BitMEX. You can short on Bitfinex. You can short on, what else, guys? You guys know. On a few others. But you want liquidity when you're doing that. So don't go with the tiny exchange. Go with something that has a little bit more liquidity. MFT. BNB. Oh, good question on BNB. Let me cover that and then I'll wrap it up. See, I'm already over. I told you guys it's going to be impossible to do 30 minutes live stream. Like, that's just impossible. Let me see here. Yeah, the Kraken user interface is not all that, although they're making some updates. You can use the beta one already, and it has more of a chart feel to it, but it has volume on some of the big names. MFT. Oh yeah, this is the one that was just listed on Binance here, but hasn't bottomed yet. But a lot of these ICO listings, once they bottom out, definitely want to keep an eye on. Nothing to do yet. EOS, I'm looking at that as a retracement here, so definitely want to be watching. And I want to talk Binance here before I wrap it up, and we'll go ahead and call it a stream, but Binance, and I've already got it highlighted here. So let me clear this here real quick. And it's funny that Binance was a port in the storm during the big pullback, and now that the pullback looks like be ending, look at this thing pulling in, right? Just so many that have done this in the past, right? Litecoin did this last year. I remember Litecoin was kind of rallying while everything was pulling in. As soon as the bear ended, Litecoin just sat flat and everything took off, and Binance is doing something similar here. But what I'm watching here is this breakout from the all-time highs that it broke out of here in June. It's coming right back to this point here, right? So there's the little box that I have highlighted is kind of the buy zone, if you will, that I'm looking at as a potential place to start looking into this. It is starting to hit these, low RSI levels, not quite extreme oversold, but it's definitely getting there. And if we see a quick spike and a reversal, I'm going to be paying attention here, especially as it retraces right back to the prior highs here. And you can see the top of this wick is the top of that box. So that's how I got to that point there, just in case you were wondering. So that's what I'm looking at, but it's definitely on my radar now that it's had this deep pullback. And somebody asked me about this on the live stream on Monday, and I said, it doesn't look ready yet. It's going to have to prove itself by going higher before I do anything with it. And now I was looking at this point, and obviously it didn't go higher. But now that it's pulling back that much, it's looking interesting from a different perspective now. Looking at BNB on the Tether pair, the signal's not quite as clean, right? The chart here doesn't give you as many clues from that perspective. And so just wanted to be watching from the BTC pair, in my opinion. Tezos, I haven't been following it a whole lot. I know it's just been listed on market cap here. And just so you guys know, there's going to be a lot of names that show up on market cap that are just going to suddenly make like the top 20, top 30 list. That are, they have private round funding, weren't able to do the normal ICO because of securities regulation and all that craziness. But there's some good projects out there that are going to be coming, and when they launch, they'll be up here. And unfortunately, right, the dream of decentralized crowdsourcing and all that, that's pretty much gone, in my opinion. And I don't want to be bearish about it, and you can disagree, but just because the regulation, right? Most of the ICOs that I talk to, people that are raising funds, they're taking that approach. They're being very careful. They're saying accredited investors, they'd rather just go to the VC route and raise more money from fewer people than do the crowdsourcing anyway. So it's kind of interesting how it's kind of swung from one extreme to the other. But speaking of Tezos, just not following it as closely yet here. But there's going to be others that show up. Let's see here. Lumen, Filecoin. Yeah, Filecoin. Whatever happened to Filecoin? That had so much press and big VCs going into that. There's going to be lots of coins going to zero. You bet there is. I mean, look at Coin Market Cap lists over 1,600 names, 90% of which are crap coins. And yeah, that's going to be a lot to go to zero. But if you caught my newsletter, right, I mentioned that, right? The valuation of, 99% of these guys is largely speculative right now, because you're treating these as startup projects. And these are all projects. Yes, some of them have working products now. I get all that, but they're startups. And the ones that, yeah, Definity, exactly. Definity be one that lists. And by the time it lists, it'll be worth $1 billion, $2 billion. Some of those type of names. But these are startups. And they're just going to be, they're high risk. Some of them are going to be around and some of them won't. Some of them are all competing for the same space. And so ultimately the market's not going to be able to, there's going to be a few dominant players and then a bunch of smaller guys, right? And yeah, the market cap will ultimately grow much larger, in my opinion. But who's going to be the winners? Anybody's guess yet. But some of these names that are in the top 10 will probably be around still, right? But there's going to be new names that are probably not even on our radar yet. And so that's why when you hodl, you hear people say, oh, this is a long-term game. You got to be in it for 5. You got to have a 5-year horizon. I totally disagree with that notion, other than maybe Bitcoin, right? Ethereum. I completely disagree with that notion because of that concept of, hey, these are all startups that in 5 years, I bet you most of these won't be here. Some of them will be, but there'll be new ones that are here, right? So the whole notion of just buy and hold for 5 years, you got to rebalance, in my opinion. You got to rebalance often, and it's a fine line, right? You don't want to overdo it, because then there's times where you should just hold and ride it out, but there's times where it's kind of like, just cut it loose and put money into something else. The only one would be the exception would be Bitcoin. Like, in my opinion, like, you could, this is me, it's not financial advice, but I could just blindly hold Bitcoin and come back 5 years later, and I'd be comfortable with that. With other names, I wouldn't. Like, if you told me, here, put some names in a portfolio and you cannot change it for 5 years, man, there'd be very few names on this list that I would pick. Just very few. Because of that, I'd rather have the option of flexibility. And that's what I do. That's the approach I take. I'm active management. It's a relative hodl. hodl with an asterisk. So would I hold Ripple? No, Ripple would not be in my choice. If somebody said hold it for 5 years, it wouldn't be Ripple. Is it going to be around? Maybe, but it just wouldn't be my choice. Okay. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hitting that like button. And thanks for listening to me ramble on this cold edition of the Node Investor. And I'll give you guys another update probably over the weekend going into Sunday. We'll see what the markets decide to do. Bitcoin, the weekends are generally a little odd sometimes. Just, a lot of people take the weekends off. Trading is lower volume generally, so it'll be interesting. It's easier to move the market, so you get those extremes. But Sunday evening is usually when I start my week again, and I start scanning the charts, and you start to see some movements going before Monday. So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I will keep you guys posted. So thanks for being here. Have a wonderful evening, weekend, rest of your day, wherever you may be. Till next time, take care, everyone.